My name is Nathan Reyes. I'm 32, the founder and CEO of ElevateFlow Systems, a digital marketing tech company currently valued at just over $8 million. You'd think building something like that from the ground up, working 80-hour weeks, going without sleep, pouring every ounce of knowledge and sacrifice into it, would earn me some respect from the people who raised me. But last Sunday, over a plate of reheated lasagna at my parents' house in our old neighborhood in Crestwood, Ohio, I learned that respect from family isn't always earned. Sometimes, it's just handed to someone else. My father, Richard Reyes, didn't even look uncomfortable when he said it. He met my eyes with a half smirk and told me, "We've given your shares to your brother. He needs them more than you do." I remember blinking, unsure I'd heard him correctly. "You can always make more money," he added casually. "Mason can't." My mother just nodded, like this was the most reasonable decision in the world. I put my fork down, looked him in the eye, and simply said, "Is that so?" That night, I withdrew every cent of my investment from the family's trust fund, money I had contributed over the years to help them when they were struggling. That was just the beginning. Before I explain how I turned their betrayal into my most powerful pivot, let me take you back to where this story really began. Growing up in Crestwood, we never had much. Dad worked maintenance at the local factory, and Mom pieced together part-time work wherever she could find it: substitute teaching, babysitting, holiday retail. Our small two-bedroom home always smelled faintly of mildew and engine grease, and something always needed fixing. There were 4 of us, and somehow, 3 bedrooms still weren't enough for peace. Mason, my younger brother by 3 years, was diagnosed with juvenile arthritis when he was 6. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was enough to brand him the fragile one. That single label shaped every dynamic in our family. Mason got the bigger bedroom with the working heater. He got the new clothes, while I wore thrift store hand-me-downs. He got the second helpings, while I learned not to ask. My school plays were missed for his physical therapy appointments. My report cards, which boasted straight A's and math competitions, were tacked to the fridge for exactly 1 day before being replaced by Mason's most improved soccer certificate. I was the sturdy one, the Iraq of the family, as my mom called me. What that really meant was that no one checked if I needed anything. No one noticed when I stayed up until 2 a.m. fixing a neighbor's old PC for cash. No one offered help when I spent weekends working at the public library, saving for my future. From an early age, I was obsessed with systems, how things worked, how they could be made better. I started fixing computers in our neighborhood when I was 13. By 16, I had my own side hustle building websites for small businesses in Crestwood. Mr. Donahue, who ran a printing shop a few blocks from our house, gave me my first real project. I built his website for $50. He paid me in cash and told me, "You've got something, kid. Don't waste it." But in my house, ambition wasn't celebrated unless it made Mason's life easier. I remember getting accepted into a summer STEM program in Chicago. It was a big deal. Only 20 students in the state were selected. My dad didn't let me go. "We can't leave Mason here alone for a week," he said. "And your mother can't manage everything without you." I remember sitting on the porch that night, watching Mason through the window as he played video games on the console I had saved up to buy him for Christmas. It was the first time I felt anger towards him. Not jealousy, just this gnawing realization that he never had to fight for space. I chose a state college over the scholarships I'd earned out of state. It was close to home, and I could keep working. That's where I met Connor Wu, a quiet genius with software. We were paired for a business development class, tasked with creating a theoretical tech startup. Our idea? A digital marketing platform for local businesses, streamlined, affordable, and smart. "You know we could actually build this, right?" Connor said after we aced the final presentation. IT sounded like a dream, until it didn't. After college, while everyone else chased jobs, we chased a vision. I turned down a salaried position at a digital agency and moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with Connor. We survived on instant ramen and black coffee. Our desks were salvaged from Craigslist. Our chairs didn't match. We coded during the day, pitched during the night, and when we failed, we tried again. The first version of our platform was buggy and unattractive, but it worked. I would call 10 businesses a day, 20, sometimes Most laughed. Some listened. One signed on, and then another, and another. Even as the company grew, I kept sending money home. When Mason's car broke down, I covered it. When Mom needed dental surgery, I paid the bill. Dad never asked, but the expectation was always there. They never thanked me. Not once. Mason tried a few jobs, retail, warehouse shifts, an ill-fated stint at a marketing firm. Nothing stuck. Each time he failed, my parents coddled him further. He just hasn't found his thing yet, Mom would say. When I bought my first office space, I told them on a video call. Dad nodded, distracted. Mom asked if I could send $400 for Mason's rent. Last Sunday was supposed to be a celebration. I had announced ElevateFlow's expansion into international markets. We had just signed a major client out of Germany. I'd taken time off for once, flew home, and joined them for dinner. Mason was already seated, smug smile on his face. Dad was in a good mood. Mom looked tired but content. Your brother's got news, Dad said halfway through the meal. He's going to help us manage your shares in the family trust. We've given them to him. I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. What do you mean given? Well, Dad said, leaning back, Mason needs a leg up. You're doing fine. You'll bounce back. He's still figuring things out. It wasn't a discussion. It was done that night. I pulled my capital from the family trust. I also pulled something else, my loyalty. I left that meeting with Timothy Westfield with my heart thudding in my chest and hope sparking like firecrackers in my bloodstream. He hadn't signed anything, not yet, but there was interest. Real, tangible interest. For once, my persistence wasn't just seen as stubbornness. It was working. 2 weeks later, we got the call. Regional Healthcare Network signed a 1-year contract. It wasn't massive, but it was enough. Enough to pay the rent. Enough to keep us alive. Enough to prove to the world, and maybe even to myself, that I wasn't crazy. Ryan and I celebrated that night with $2 pizza slices and store-brand soda. But I remember looking around my dim, cluttered apartment, and it hit me. I wasn't doing this just to prove something to investors. I was building something permanent. Something real that we reinvested every dime we made. I didn't upgrade my lifestyle. Didn't take weekends off. I still sent money home every month, covering Charlotte's bills, my parents' groceries, even a new roof when the old one started leaking. No one ever thanked me, not really. It was just assumed I would handle it. I'd become the family's financial backbone, the unacknowledged benefactor. They didn't know I was now co-running a company about to break into 6 figures in revenue, and I didn't tell them, because deep down, I wanted to see who they'd be if they thought I had nothing to be. By the time Webcore Solutions hit its second year, we had 5 employees, 2 interns, and clients in 4 states. We moved into a modest office space, a box with no windows and a flickering overhead light, but it was ours. I bought my first car in 10 years. Used, economical, nothing fancy. Just enough to get me from point A to point B. But still, I didn't tell my family. They thought I was working freelance, just barely scraping by. And honestly, they liked me that way. It kept their expectations low and their guilt lower. Charlotte, meanwhile, had tried and failed at 3 new ventures, a baking blog, an Etsy shop, and a dog walking business. Each ended the same way, quickly and dramatically. Every time she gave up, my parents were there to cushion the fall. It's not her fault, my mom would say. She just needs more support. Support, meaning me. On my birthday that year, I drove home to surprise them. I hadn't been back in 6 months. My mom greeted me with a smile, but I could tell she was distracted. My dad barely looked up from the TV. Charlotte wasn't even home. No one had planned anything. No cake. No dinner. Just a lukewarm, "Oh, it's today?" From my father. They didn't ask how I was doing. But they did ask if I could cover the heating bill. I handed over the money and told them it was fine, but it wasn't. The real fracture came one Sunday over dinner. I'd been invited back under the guise of family appreciation. My mother set the table with the good china. My dad grilled steaks. Charlotte showed up in a new designer coat she couldn't possibly afford on her latest job at the bookstore, and then it came. Over dessert, my dad said, "We've made a decision. Your shares in the company." I paused mid-bite. "What shares?" "The family shares," he said. "Your mother and I agreed it would be better if Charlotte held them. She's been struggling more than you." My heart stopped. "Shares in what company?" I asked slowly, almost afraid of the answer. "In Webcore," he replied, like it was obvious. "You've got plenty. You can always make more." "But Charlotte? She needs a leg up." I stared at them, numb. "You gave her shares in a company she didn't build? That she had nothing to do with?" "You're being selfish," my mother chimed in. "You always act like it's all yours." "It is all mine," I said. "I built it. Every line of code, every pitch, every contract, that was me." Charlotte shrugged. "It's just business. You'll bounce back." I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just stood up and said, "Is that so?" That night, I called our lawyer. "The shares they thought they had? Those were never issued." "What they had were pieces of paper I'd given them 5 years ago when I was desperate for their approval. But I'd never filed anything official. And now I revoked every last one." That the next few weeks were chaos. Calls, emails, texts. Charlotte showed up at the office screaming about betrayal. My mom cried over the phone. My dad left a voicemail saying I was tearing the family apart. But I'd spent a lifetime being the invisible foundation for their comfort, their dreams, their entitlement. I was done. Ryan backed me 100%. "This is your legacy, Nate," he said. "Don't hand it over to people who didn't believe in it, or you." We restructured the company. I bought out a few early investors and streamlined our client onboarding. We landed a partnership with a Fortune 500 company that took us from a modest agency to a mid-tier powerhouse. I got an apartment overlooking the river. I finally bought a decent office chair. I started taking weekends off, and I stopped sending money home. Months passed. I didn't hear from my family until I did. It was a letter from my mom, not asking for money, not accusing me, just apologizing. She said she hadn't understood. That she'd taken my silence for indifference, not realizing it was self-preservation. She said she hoped we could talk. I stared at the letter for a long time. I didn't know if I wanted to open that door again. Not yet, but I wrote her back, not a long letter. Just enough. I told her I was doing well. That I was happy. That I was finally living for myself, and maybe one day, we could talk again. As equals. I'm not invisible anymore, not to the world. Not to myself. I tell my story now, not for pity, but for power. I meet people all the time who carry the same weight I used to. The provider. The fixer. The one who sacrifices in silence. If that's you, let me say this clearly: you are allowed to take up space, you are allowed to choose yourself, and sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is simply say no, and oh to being used, and oh to being overlooked, and oh to being anything less than the whole damn architect of your own life. My name is Nathan Reyes, and I built everything they said I couldn't do. It had been 3 months since my mother's letter. I hadn't called. I hadn't visited. But every now and then, I reread those words. Part of me wanted to believe the apology was real, but another part, the wiser, more bruised part, understood something fundamental now. Growth often means leaving people behind, even if you love them. Meanwhile, business was booming. Webcore had just signed a $1.2 million deal with a national education group. We were scaling faster than I had expected. Our small team had turned into 3 departments. I was managing directors now, people who looked to me for direction, guidance, and vision. One morning, I sat alone in my new office, overlooking the skyline, and realized how strange the silence felt, not the lonely kind, but the peaceful kind. The absence of begging calls, manipulative guilt trips, or last-minute emergencies. For the first time, the quiet wasn't suffocating. It was mine, but that didn't mean I wasn't thinking about what came next. I wasn't content with comfort. Not anymore. It came in a sleek black folder, hand-delivered by a high-profile venture capital firm. Acquisition proposal, $18 million. Just like that, our 4-year-old baby, WebCore Solutions, had become a hot commodity. The company I had built from a folding chair and a salvaged whiteboard was now being courted by giants. Ryan stared at the number, then at me. So, what now? I didn't answer right away. The thought of selling twisted my stomach. Sure, the money was life-changing, but the idea of handing over my creation to people who didn't know its soul? That felt wrong. We met with their reps 2 days later. Polished. Smiling. Dead behind the eyes, they threw around words like synergy and exit strategy. They saw our company as a product. But I wasn't a product. Neither was WebCore. After they left, I turned to Ryan. We're not done. He grinned. I hoped you'd say that. We declined the offer, and instead, we went bigger. 6 months later, I was invited to speak at a national tech entrepreneurship summit. It would be my first time stepping on stage, not as an anonymous founder, not as someone hiding behind a co-founder, but as the face of WebCore Solutions. The night before the conference, I couldn't sleep, not because I was nervous, but because it felt surreal. I used to sit outside high school dances, fixing people's phones for $10. Now I was being introduced with a highlight reel and a standing ovation. The room was packed. I walked to the podium and looked out at hundreds of faces, aspiring founders, developers, students, investors. Then I told them the truth. I told them about the attic room in Millfield, the hand-me-downs, the sister who got everything, and the parents who expected everything. I told them about the fake shares, about the betrayal, about the moment I chose myself for the first time, and when I finished, they didn't just clap. They stood for me.